So I've been doing a Ninjago rewatch recently, and I just finished Season 2, or Legacy of the Green Ninja, or The Final Battle, depending on who you ask, and it did not hold up the same way that Rise of the Snakes did. Because while that season did have dated animation and some key flaws, I still found it an absolute blast with plenty of well done characterization for the main heroes. But this season just baffled me with how much missed potential there was. It's far from bad, but a clear step down from the first season. This isn't a review or retrospective of the whole season, but more of my take on why the actual final battle chapter does not work structurally or tonally. And spoiler alert, it's because of the first 6 episodes. But before we can see how those harmless episodes ruined an entire season, we need to back up and take a look at the context. Ninjago was originally only meant for a 2-season run, just like most LEGO TV show plans at the time. In early 2012, Rise of the Snakes was released with 13 episodes, and in late 2012, another 13 episodes was released under Legacy of the Green Ninja. This season ended with episode 26 titled Rise of the Spinjitzu Master, which was supposed to be the final episode of the series, which is really funny now that you look back at it. Obvious irony aside, the final battle was kinda meant to be the end-all be-all of the series, the epic conclusion to each of the ninja stories, and of course included the fabled fight of light versus darkness in the form of Lloyd versus his father that was built up with so much sauce in season 1. Now, you might have assumed that if they thought this was going to be the final season, they would go all out and pull out all the stops to deliver a tight, emotional, and satisfying story very similar to the first season. In fact, you would expect even more stakes. And what is the first episode of this season? It's the ninja getting jobs to pay for their new home. Okay, sure, seems kinda aimless, but reasonable enough since the bounty is gone. What's the next episode? Oh, Garmadon uses the mega weapon to conjure up pirates that pillage Ninjago City. Okay, weird, but sure. And this keeps happening until we got to the point where the ninja have to enter a race with the Ultrasonic Raider to save their dojo, Garmadon has resurrected an ancient dinosaur monster, and the cherry on top, Garmadon travels back in time to the first episode to get the ninja off the menu. What the fuck? Not only do none of these ideas build upon what happened in the previous episode, but the episodes themselves are mostly self-contained adventures with little to no story progression. Now, if you've been a part of this community for any amount of time, you probably already know about these quote-unquote filler episodes. However, I think if you ask most modern-day Ninjago fans what their thoughts on the first 6 episodes of the season are, I don't think they would have the same reaction. Most people just find them fun, miscellaneous adventures that don't need to be part of something greater. See, I used to think this, and it's totally valid if you still do, but this is not the right time to do this at all when you're setting up for the biggest story arc so far. At least in the Fire chapter of Season 11, you know, there's plenty of filler, but it's not like you're building up to anything on this scale. It's not like you're building up to the coveted battle of light versus darkness. And what frustrates me is that them taking up the episode count actually has direct consequences on the final battle itself. I know a lot of you would argue that the final battle arc from episodes 7 or 8 to 13 is largely unimpacted by these filler episodes. Sure, those episodes are kinda useless, but at least the final battle is still great regardless, right? Well, to me, no, and that's for a few key reasons. But first, I really would appreciate it if you guys subscribe to the Bricksider. I really appreciate all the support I've been getting on these videos so far, it means a lot. And I just want to see our channel reach even more people, and subscribing is the easiest way for that to happen. So thank you so much. Back to the video. The main reason why I think the final battle storyline doesn't work to its fullest potential is because of Lord Garmadon. I cannot stand the Season 2 version of Garmadon. He's straight up the weakest in this season compared to every other appearance. And Garmadon is my favorite villain in the whole show. He's by far the most consistently written character. That's with the exception of this season. He goes from being a misguided but ultimately loving father that was just destined for a darker path to becoming a complete fool in this season. I swear, none of the drive or bloodthirst that he keeps yapping about is ever actually translated on screen. And it's because of how the season is paced. These first 6 episodes, he's just screwing around with the mega weapon, learning how it works, and when he finally does, he comes up with the most lame contraptions to try to beat the ninja. Seriously, the ideas that he comes up with are creative, but it's so obvious that the writers held back on letting him do more destructive things with the weapon, because that's what happens when you introduce an artifact that can literally create anything. That's why you don't do that. It's not even just his actions that make him seem incompetent, it's just the way he's treated by some of the other characters. He constantly gets mocked and ridiculed by the Serpentine, Captain Soda's pirates, and even the ninja. It just never seems like he has the upper hand. But the reasons why this negatively impacts the final battle is because nothing in the first half of the season really sets up Lloyd and Garmadon's confrontation. And you can kind of see why when you look at the big picture. It's because, no, the final battle of good versus evil wasn't between a corrupted father and his vivacious son. It's the battle between Lloyd versus the Overlord, the true darkness, if you will. But we'll get to that part later. Garmadon mentions a few times not wanting to hurt his son, and it's pretty clear that he just wants to get rid of the rest of the ninja, but his plans almost always put Lloyd in danger, even if they're in indirect ways. And in general, if they wanted to pull off the whole father versus son thing, they needed to actually interact more in the earlier half of the season, which didn't happen. I'm pretty sure Lloyd says like one line to his father before they step on the Dark Island, and it makes this moment feel a lot less impactful.
I'm sorry, father. You leave me no choice.
Just compare this to how Sons of Garmadon treated the conflict between Lloyd and his dad. Lloyd actually wanted to confront his father in the second half of the last episode to try to appeal to the side of him that could still potentially have some love in it. This continues into Hunted, where Lloyd has not just one but several meaningful interactions with Garmadon that ultimately make his final defeat so much more impactful. In Season 2, there's just not enough of that. Hell, Season 1 did a better job of setting up the conflict if you ask me. Even when Garmadon does eventually get to the Dark Island to start the countdown for the final battle, he's still not a great threat. I mean, yeah, it's pretty clear that the Overlord is just using Garmadon as a pawn to take on a physical form. It makes Garmadon feel a lot more gullible and less controlling of the situation. Overall, while I love Lord Garmadon as a character, he's always been at his lowest in this season, and I do think that improving his appearances throughout the season would greatly benefit the impact of the final battle. The easiest way they could have done this was getting rid of the filler in the first half and actually planting the seeds for Garmadon's takeover of the Stone Army. The season obviously improves a lot after episode 7, but even then, the ninja don't actually get to the island until the end of episode 9. At that point, there's only a little over an hour and a half to end the season. So much time was wasted with the earlier episodes that they didn't leave the second half with the pieces required to make Lloyd and Garmadon's conflict perfect. Garmadon's just half of the puzzle though. Once we roll around to the last 2 episodes with the actual final battle, it's a reveal that the Overlord was just waiting for the Doomsday Clock to strike so he could possess Garmadon and become the greatest ruler of Ninjago. My main issue with this is that it pans out exactly the way that's foretold in episode 7 when Misako introduces the Overlord to us. It becomes painfully obvious what's going to happen. Honestly though, this could have led to a silently impactful moment where the Overlord is slowly manipulating, coercing Garmadon into doing his bidding until he finally is able to overtake him physically. But that's not really what happens. Sure, the Overlord does take advantage of and manipulate Garmadon, but he's not really sinister in the way that you'd expect. We don't really get to see his perspective at all. And that's because he's a complete blank slate whose only character trait is, I am the embodiment of evil. Like, there's a massive difference between being deliciously evil like Pythor and just straight up boring. The most disappointing part is with Lloyd and the Overlord's confrontation in the actual final battle, where Lloyd has to defeat generic Big Bad instead of his father. This just reeks of missed potential. You did all this build up for Garmadon to barely be part of the final confrontation. Think about it logically for a second. Lloyd does not want to fight his father. He makes it very clear throughout the entire season, and we see how he learns to realize that defeating Garmadon is the only way Ninjago will ever have peace. Garmadon also struggles to fight Lloyd, but because of the Overlord's manipulation, he begins to see it as a means to an end for his ultimate goal. This could have led to an amazing final act where both of these characters' loving relationship with each other overpowered their greater ambitions. With some major tweaking to the rest of the season's story, as I've already discussed, this could have been something really special. But no, that never happens. Lloyd already believes that his father is gone forever and is just fighting a demonic bad guy who he has no sympathy for, meaning he's just gonna fight him as normal with full force. He unlocks his ultimate spinjitzu power, spews some tongue-in-cheek dialogue, and ultimately prevails over darkness. Weirdly enough, I still really do enjoy this episode for what it is. It just frustrates me so much that it could have been so much more. That's the thing about the final battle. You might think I hate this season because I've done nothing but complain for the last however long it's been, but I sincerely don't. Not just because of nostalgia. There are glimpses and even entire episodes that are truly amazing in their own right. Episode 10, titled The Island of Darkness, contains without a doubt one of my favorite scenes in all of classic Ninjago with the Temple of Light sequence. If you haven't seen it in a while like I had, please check it out. It's magnificently well done, and I've been watching it on repeat while making this video. Zane meeting Dr. Julian in episode 9 was also great. It's a bit of a detour from getting to the Dark Island, but honestly it was worth it for the special interaction. If they were going to do filler, I would want more of this stuff. Hell, this was supposed to be the last season. Why weren't there more meaningful interactions between characters? This episode is a perfect example of that. Even with the first 6 episodes, I still kinda like Child's Play just because of how it handles Lloyd having to age 10 years. This is a good self-contained story, but it should have played a larger role into the themes and overall vision of the season. There's so many individual scenes and moments that I'll always love, but it's just the overall execution and how it's all structured that leaves a lot to be desired. If you're a fan of the final battle and still consider it to be one of the greatest arcs in Ninjago's history, that's completely valid. I can see where you guys are coming from. I just wish it could have been even better. Those are just my thoughts though, and I'd love to hear yours in the comments down below. That's all for me, guys. I'll see ya in the next one.